Jimmy popping all that bullshit. I be seeing you, Jimmy, talking about we Gucci boo boo. He in the Gucci store, talking about we Gucci boo boo. The Black King was going up. Jimmy like, Marita Manera.
If I told you I was in the Rock Nation office, how would you feel about that? Huh? You think I was lying? That's clear enough for you?
Just fired shots straight at Jim Jones, and he didn't hold back. Why? Because Jim had the audacity to come at Nas. In response, 50 unleashed some rare footage that's got everyone buzzing. In the clip, you see Jim going off on Jay-Z, one moment calling him weak, the next practically pleading for a Rock Nation deal. Let's be real for a second. 50's never exactly been tight with Jim or Jay, but Nas, that's someone he genuinely respects. So when Jim recently claimed he was more relevant than Nas, and even said he's the reason Nas went viral again, yeah, that rubbed 50 the wrong way. But here's the kicker. What 50 exposed wasn't just about Jim dissing Nas. It turned into a full-blown history lesson on Jim's shady behavior over the years. This man's loyalty is all over the place. One day he's playing the tough guy, and the next he's suddenly all peaceful, talking unity, especially when Jay-Z's name comes up. Let's not forget, Jim spent over a decade throwing shade at Jay. He even went so far as to lay hands on one of Jay's executives back in the day. But when his pockets started drying up, suddenly Jay was a hero, and Jim was back trying to lock in that Rock Nation handshake like none of it ever happened. Now 50 is flipping the script and using this moment to expose Jim's pattern, reminding everyone that this isn't just reckless talk. Jim has been switching sides for years. No loyalty, no consistency, and definitely no shame. Jim likes to act like he's doing it all for the culture, but it's all just smoke and mirrors. The real chaos started the moment he tried to come for Nas, and it backfired big time. That one move gave 50 Cent all the ammo he needed to dig up Jim's messy history, and now it's all out in the open.
Past
way more influential than Nas, and I don't care what nobody say. I know I made a little boo-boo when we talk about the sales and all this type. I don't feel like getting into that rhetoric about where I started and where he started.
Well, you said that.
But listen, Nas was nice when I was in high school. When I was in 10th grade, Nas came out. Nas was dope. We appreciated him. He had a little bit run. But Nas always came up second to Jay and DMX and all these other people.
But lyrically, I'm gonna keep it a stack with you.
Trust, they found receipts. Let's talk about how Jim went from dissing Jay-Z to straight up bowing down. Everybody knows 50 Cent doesn't sugarcoat anything. So when Jim clowned Nas and tried to act like he was the new king of lyrical rap, 50 wasted no time calling him out. He even called Jim Jay-Z's lapdog. And honestly, it's hard to argue with him after what came out. So here's what went down. Jim ran his mouth saying he's better than Nas. Not just once, but over and over. He even got into it with Shannon Sharpe saying he could run circles around Nas in the booth. Like, seriously. Jim said, nobody's checking for Nas right now. And tried to act like he's the reason Nas is even relevant again, like he's the one that brought Nas back into the game. That's wild, especially since Nas never left in the first place. But the moment Jim dragged Jay-Z into it, you knew 50 was gonna step in. And what did he do? He hit the internet with an old school clip. Jim at Rock Nation HQ acting hyped and cheesing like he just won the lottery. And to top it off, 50 clowned him in the caption, saying someone asked if he's got more enemies than friends. And 50 basically said, I don't know, but I don't got lapdogs like this around me. Now the whole internet's watching Jim squirm. 50 Cent threw up a caption that read, I thought about it and said, yes, poor me, I'm suffering from success, LOL. But don't get it twisted. That wasn't just a flex. That was a straight up jab with layers. If you know the full history between Jim Jones and Jay-Z.
Y'all look how you dress. Look how you dress. You don't even be in the same places I be in. And the things
I can be in the church house. You can't ever Nas lyrics. I don't know who told you that. Now look, y'all know you on that good stuff, but you're not seeing Nas.
Bro,
you're not seeing Nas, bro. Let's be real.
You got a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds in their panties because I said I'm better than Nas.
It don't matter.
Look at you.
Hey,
I will run circles around Nas rapping right. I will run circles around Nas rapping right now. Right now, I will run Saturn around Nas right now rapping. Everybody knows that.
That post hit way deeper than it looks. See, Jim spent over 13 years going at Jay. We're talking diss tracks, slick interviews, and even real life street drama. But when the game shifted and he needed a boost, Suddenly, Jim switched up, flipped the script, and came crawling for Jay's approval. That's what 50's calling out. Not just one wild moment, but a whole pattern of switch-ups. Jim's recent shot at Nas is turning into a full-on boomerang, and it's coming back to smack him right in the face, because now it's bringing up all the skeletons he tried to bury. Especially how he went from beefing with Jay to practically begging for a handshake. Let's take it back real quick. It all started back in 2002. Cameron and Jim Jones got brought into Rockefeller by Dame Dash. Jim even said Cam was promised a vice president title, but Jay-Z, he never confirmed that publicly. Cam told the source at the time, "I don't even know if I'm going to take the role, but I mean, I can have it. It's mine." Meanwhile, Jay told the source something totally different, that nothing was official yet, and the talk was a little premature. So, from the jump, there was tension in the air. Then came the remix to Cam and Joel Santana's hit, Oh Boy. Jay jumped on it with a new verse. And guess what? He used that feature to throw shots at Nas, but Cam and Jim shut that down immediately. They refused to release the remix, and Cam later erased Jay's verse completely, saying he wasn't about to let Jay-Z use their song to fight his battles. That moment right there, when Jay's verse got cut from Oh Boy, set the tone for everything that followed. Jim and Cameron felt straight up disrespected. They believed Jay didn't rate them, didn't see their movement as serious, and that's when the sneak dissing era kicked off in full swing. Jim started going at Jay more and more on radio, in interviews, and in the streets. He painted Jay-Z as out of touch, all corporate and clean cut.
Ever, he's never been talked about like this ever in his life.
Now, has Nas reached out to you?
You did. The last time he was in some this what people were comparing is when him and Jay was beating on him.
Say that.
Dipset was raw, loud, and straight from the block. Jim wanted it known. Dipset was flashy, aggressive, and had the streets on lock while Jay was suited up in boardrooms playing CEO. He made it clear that in his eyes, Jay had been left behind by the hood. Like the people moved on, but Jay stayed in the office. At first, Jay didn't say a word publicly, but the tension inside Rockefeller, oh, everybody felt it. That label was bubbling with friction. Then 2006 hit and Jim dropped We Fly High. The track exploded and Ballin turned into a cultural anthem overnight. For the first time, Jim had a real solo hit. And suddenly Jay couldn't stay quiet no more. Jay fired back with Brooklyn High, a remix of Jim's own track. But this wasn't a tribute, it was straight up shade. Jay mocked Jim's flow, his lyrics, even his famous balling ad-lib. It was cold, surgical, and dismissive. Like Jay was saying, this is cute. Now let me show you how it's done. But Jim wasn't about to stay silent. He clapped back with the beef mix, flipping the beat again and aiming directly at Jay. He called him old, out of touch, and weak, like Jay had lost the streets, respect, and couldn't get it back. Things got real wild when the beef between Jim Jones and Jay-Z spilled out of the booth and into the streets, literally. In 2008, Jim was caught on surveillance footage putting hands on someone inside a Louis Vuitton store. And it wasn't just any random dude. It turned out to be Lenny Santiago, Jay-Z's longtime A&R and close associate. Jim got arrested for the incident and later plead guilty to misdemeanor assault. That right there, it turned a rap rivalry into something way more personal. Now, Jay, true to his style, didn't speak publicly about the altercation, but behind the scenes, everybody could feel the message loud and clear. This wasn't rap games anymore. This was real tension. A few months late. Jay did an interview with DXL where he talked about the state of hip-hop, and though he didn't name drop Jim in a diss track, he took some slick jabs. He said songs like Jim's Nah 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 were hurting the culture. Jay said, I mean like Jim Jones, for example. And I don't mean this because we never see eye to eye. He made Nah 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 Nah. What's the difference between that and Smiley Face or Soulja Boy? That song could have been called Smiley Face. That was Jay's way of clowning Jim without breaking a sweat. He might not have been brawling in stores, but he was still throwing shade just with a suit on instead of a mic. From there, the whole beef cooled into a quiet Cold War. Between 2010 and 2015, there were no diss tracks or public fights, just straight up silent tension in the air. But then in 2015, Dipet decided to stir the pot again. Cameron and Jim dropped a freestyle over Diddy's Victory beat, and this time they weren't holding back. They threw shots at Jay-Z, Rock Nation, and even mocked the whole brunch lifestyle Jay had been pushing. They painted the label as nothing but industry puppets and took it a step further by referencing Beyonce too. Cam rapped, having money don't make you a real one.
First of all, let's get right to it. There seems to be some drama. You and The Rock, Jay-Z, you try to diss. You did diss him.
I diss nobody.
You dissed him.
I diss Michael Jordan.
Oh man, we just there's no drama, man. No, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. Shout out to Dame Dash, who started Rockefeller Records. If y'all don't know, he's responsible for Rockefeller getting off the floor. That started in Harlem. You know what I'm talking about?
Step on the court, you're gonna play my game. Just take Shotty's advice and say my name. They wanted the smoke, and this was Dipset's way of reigniting that fire with Jay. But by the time Dipset was trying to stir things up again, Jay-Z was already way out of reach. He was living billionaire life, married to Beyonce, collecting million-dollar art, launching Tidal, and building a sports empire. So when Jim and Cam kept throwing shots from the sideline, Jay wasn't sweating it. He wasn't even looking their way. A clip resurfaced recently where Jay broke it down perfectly. He compared himself to Michael Jordan and called Jim the 8th guy on the bench, screaming at the MVP. That hit hard, and it was in that moment Jim had to face it. All the yelling, all the shots, all the real street talk, it just made him look bitter. So what did Jim do next? He did a complete 180. And that's what 50 Cent is flaming him for now. After all that tough talk, Jim flipped sides and started begging Jay for a seat at the table, and guess what? In February 2017, it actually happened. Jim officially signed a deal with Roc Nation. 13 years of nonstop beef and disses, and now he was on the team. But Jim didn't sign on the low. Nah, he went full hype mode. He bragged about getting invited to the same Roc Nation brunch he used to clown. Suddenly, he was all over interviews, calling Jay a role model, praising his business moves, and saying he always respected him. Let's not forget, this is the same man who once accused Jay of betraying the streets, called him soft, and even put hands on his close friend. Now he was acting like Jay had always been the blueprint. And what did Jay do in return? Nothing. No welcome post, no speech, no big brother moment. Jay stayed silent. The only sign of the deal was one quiet photo of the two together. That's it. And that silence says everything. But that one photo, that was enough for Jim to act like he'd finally made it. He went from throwing punches to throwing praise overnight. And ever since that Roc Nation deal, he's been moving like none of the beef ever happened. Like those 13 years of shots, sneak disses, and even assault charges just vanished. Jim started talking in interviews about how he and Jay had a grown man moment and how the past was behind them. But let's be real, it wasn't about growth, it was about survival. Jim needed a lifeline in. The industry in Roc Nation was the biggest name on the block. So he folded. And this is exactly why 50 Cent is dragging him now. Because after all, the chaos Jim caused, all that fake tough energy, he ended up doing the same thing. He clowned other people for switching up for a bag. 50 posted that old Roc Nation footage to remind everyone this ain't just rap politics. This is who Jim Jones really is. A man who disses when he's up, begs when he's down, and rewrites history when it suits him. And now that Jim tried to downplay Nas, someone 50 actually respects, that was the last straw. That's why 50 said, "Now let's talk about who you are." He didn't just expose Jim's past, he dragged it back into the spotlight for everybody to see. So now the internet's watching clips of Jim cheesing at the Roc Nation office, calling Jay the greatest after years of disrespect. And folks are saying what 50's been hinting at all along, Jim ain't built like that. He just talks like he is. And even in that one photo of Jim and Jay together, Jay-Z looked like he'd rather be anywhere but next to him. No smiles, no energy, just business. Jim finally got to sit at the table, but Jay made sure it was crystal clear. This was a favor, not a friendship. They weren't equals. They never were. And the wildest part, for over a decade, from 2002 to 2017, Jim built his whole brand around not being Jay-Z. Dipset was the opposite of Roc Nation. Jim pushed the image of being the raw, gritty street king, while Jay was the polished, buttoned-up businessman. Dipset was the resistance, the rebellious voice that didn't follow industry rules. But when the money started drying up and the spotlight faded, that entire street build identity crumbled. Jim tossed out all that anti-Jay energy and ran straight to the man he used to call soft. And Jay, he didn't need to say a word. He just waited it out, played chess, not checkers. And when Jim came crawling, Jay took the meeting, inked the deal, and walked away without even flinching. That's exactly the message 50 Cent is pushing right now. He's saying, look at this guy. Years of talking tough, only to end up begging the same man he dissed. And none of this would have resurfaced if Jim hadn't come at someone who's actually earned his respect the real way. but he did. And now the internet is eating up every clip, every quote, every contradiction. Jim's history of flip-flopping and fake loyalty is out in the open again, and the receipts, they hit hard. So now we got to ask, is this the final chapter for Jim Jones? Can his career bounce back, or is this the fallout that finishes everything? Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and don't forget to drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. Catch you on the next